But that was the disturbing side of the counterculture 60s. There was the 70s and there was the 80s. There was the 80s gay thing that was just, I mean, like, yeah, Freddie Mercury was sort of like the archetype, the gay, hedonistic, life lived for pleasure that was this ethos that was still there from the 60s. And Freddie Mercury, yeah, got AIDS, went thin, pale, got those terrible sarcomas all over his body, like a lot of gay people, and succumbed, like a lot of gay people in the 80s. So yeah, the 80s, ironically, to about 92 in the Reagan and Bush years, were represented a kind of revival of traditional moral thinking. But the thing is, in a lot of people's minds, I think even in the minds of the baby boomer generation, who were the 60s generation, all the people born after the Second World War, when all the troops returned, they're called the baby boom. There was a huge, between like 45 and 55, there was this giant spike in the number of children born. And the baby boomers, I mean, they're all approaching retiring age. But now they're like senior citizens. Well, they're occupying a lot of senior positions in government, industry in the Western society. But the thing was, no one's ever challenged or questioned really what underlies this is Darwinist thinking. And that's the problem, because I'm the only guy I've ever met, really, who's actually read Darwin's books on the origin of species and the descent of man. And it's surprising to know that Charles Darwin wasn't a scientist. He was a pseudoscientist. Charles Darwin was a complete fraud. His ideas are risible, and the things he said are wrong in fact. I mean, there's this a lot of people think of this idea of Darwinism being about survival of the fittest, like nature or fate or chance acts on living species the same way that an artificial human breeder of animals, he will engage in selective breeding to bring out certain traits in a species and breeds different breeds, like dogs, Dalmatians or German Shepherds or something. But this idea that Darwin had, that nature acts and as a kind of doing artificial, they're doing selection, natural selection to to produce breeds. I mean, that's what everyone thinks of Darwinism as being, but that problem with that, it doesn't even start to explain the problem. I mean, the very problem in the origin of the species is the origin of the species, which is the question. I mean, everyone's known about breeding or inbreeding for certain traits for thousands of years. That's all human societies know how to do that. The question is, the question that Darwin supposedly answered, which I'll explain in a second. The question he was supposedly answered was the jump from the breed to the distinct species, which is a puzzle. Like, why do certain species, when interbred with other species, produce infertile offspring? Like horses and donkeys produce infertile mules. Now, in The Descent of Man, Darwin advances this explanation of how does the jump between the breed and the species occur. Darwin offered up absurdly, completely conventional Lamarckianism. That was his answer. It's in The Descent of Man. Maybe if something happens to a species over and over and over again, over generations, and suddenly somehow it becomes imprinted in their genes, like Lamarck's ideas of cutting off the tails of mice of successive generations and thinking that maybe there'll be a generation of mice which are born with no tails. Now this is a completely discredited theory. Lamarckianism is a discredited theory. I mean, when people discovered chromosomes and the genes, it was found that, yeah, there's no way Lamarckianism can actually be the case. But Lamarckianism isn't just a funny old idea from the 19th century that some guy had. Lamarckianism is the centerpiece of Darwin's thinking. How do you jump from the breed to the species? Lamarck. This was his idea. This was his scientific advance. This was Charles Darwin's brilliant insight, and it is brain dead bullshit. I mean, this is the core of Darwinism, is utter nonsense. Now you can say, well, you know, there's the proof is the fossils, but human beings, human societies have known about fossils and fossil strata for thousands of years. For thousands of years, fossil strata, to most societies, were evidence of a great flood, some kind of great inundation of the world in the past. That's what it suggested to them. Now, to offer up the absurdity of Darwinism and say, well, there's the evidence, look at the fossils, that's like a textbook example of a circular argument. The unfortunate thing with such circular arguments is I could just quite as easily offer up this, the fossil record as evidence of the truth of reincarnation. I mean, there's people in America or Europe or Australia, you can, well America or Canada or Australia, you can go back to Europe and go to castles where your ancestors once resided, and you can see oil paintings of your ancestors, and sometimes, quite often, you can see people in the oil paintings who look remarkably like current living members of the family. Now, somebody who's been gone for generations, I mean, this is the credulous nonsense that this is how they prove evolution, prove reincarnation in India. Some kid looks like, a picture of his great-great-grandfather, and they go, oh, look, he must be reincarnated. He walks the same way, he talks the same way, he likes the same food. Wow, it's uncanny. Maybe he's a reincarnation of great-great-grandfather. But this is, people could advance the fossil record. You see, you've got these strata and these maybe mollusks in each particular strata that look vaguely similar, you see, and you can claim that this is, that what they do claim is that, well, the fossil record is like a series of oil paintings of successive generations, and it's assumed, I mean, it's a circular argument. The assumption is that all the mollusks in this successive series of fossil strata are all related, and maybe they're reincarnated because they have this uncanny similarity but different, but they're and obviously they somehow survive from one generation to the next, from one millennium to the next, and this is an example of the way reincarnation works, is through karma, and the fact that the survival of the fittest is in fact karma, because a virtuous life, a virtuous organism is rewarded with reincarnation as a more advanced species. Like if depending on the caste, like the caste system of India, if a poor man of a low caste lives a virtuous life, he has a chance of being reincarnated further up the social strata. So I mean, there isn't much difference really between survival of the fittest and reincarnation, and karma in that sense. And evolution is simply reincarnation. Now, and I could advance the fossil record to prove it. And that would be a circular argument. One would immediately claim that that's the difficulty with Darwinism, is that, I mean, you can say, well, we know it's true from the scientific evidence, but what is true? How can a non-scientific absurdity like Darwinism be true? The evidence notwithstanding.